meet my bride. Let's go for a ride in my newfangled automobile. Just where we will go, nobody knows, but it's sure a great way to feel. Behind the wheel of the speed meter steel, it's my newfangled automobile.
Hello and welcome to Vintage Car History. I'm Wild Bill. There's a huge amount of automotive history here where I live in Northeast Ohio. Many of America's greatest makes of cars were born here. Packard, Winton, White, Baker, Peerless. It's a long list. This region is still important in the automotive world, with companies like Timken Bearing and Summit Racing still headquartered here. And it makes sense that Summit would be located in Ohio, since the very first world-famous American race car driver also hailed from Northeast Ohio. The man who would be the first to put the USA on the racing map, Barney Oldfield. His birth name was actually Berna Eli Oldfield, but for most of his life went by Barney. He was born in 1878 near Toledo, Ohio. His family was of very modest means, his father, Henry, being a general laborer. The family moved to Toledo proper in 1889 when his dad got a job as a kitchen worker in a mental hospital. Young Barney did attend primary school for a while, but he was more interested in going fast, and that meant running and cycling. He quit school in 1892 with an 8th grade education to work with his father in the asylum kitchen, saving up his money to buy himself a good racing bicycle. What Master Oldfield lacked in education, he more than made up for in athleticism, intelligence, boldness, aggression, and over-the-top charisma. He was both a man's man and a woman's man, respected by his peers and adored by the ladies. He entered some local bike races and was successful on the track. Yet it was in 1894 when he was asked to represent the Dauntless Bicycle Company, a builder in Toledo, Ohio, to be their racer at the Ohio State Championship, that Barney's fame would begin to spread. He came in second on the day, but his charms wooed the crowds, and American cycle racing would forever be changed. Oldfield was a natural showman, and companies wanting to sell their products sought his endorsements and promotion. Like Nike hunting down Michael Jordan, manufacturers sought out Barney to sell for them and make both of them rich. Amongst the first was Stearns, who would later go on to be one of the great American car makers, was at the time making bicycles and hired Barney to be their racer and promoter. Of course, Dauntless also patronized him, and a French company, Michelin, also courted Oldfield with sponsorship and big fat checks when he won and endorsed their tires. All of this would change in 1902. A friend of Barney's, a Mr. Tom Cooper, introduced Barney to a friend of his, a young and aspiring Mr. Henry Ford. Now, Ford wanted to race cars and had even built 2 racers and driven them himself in a couple of races, but Henry was not a race car driver and preferred to just build cars and have someone else race them. And Ford decided that Oldfield was his man. But there was one small problem. Oldfield had never driven a car. So when he showed up in Michigan to try out these 2 race cars, he couldn't get either one of them to start. However, Barney was a smart man, and when Ford offered to sell him the 2 cars in the heat of the moment for a mere $800, he jumped on it and became a quick study on how to start and then drive an automobile. One of the 2 cars was called the 999, and it doesn't get more stripped down than this. This car was a huge 4-cylinder engine of nearly 19 liters, bolted to a crude iron frame, driving a straight axle to the rear, no suspension, no differential, no body on the car, steering being handled by bicycle handlebars. It produced nearly 100 horsepower and was as uncontrollable as a raging tiger. And the challenge was put forth. Ford claimed to his biggest rival in the U.S., the Winton Company, who had produced what was then the fastest American car, the Winton Bullet, that this 999 built by Ford and driven by Oldfield would beat their Bullet. And Barney had still never driven a car. In late 1902, the day of the race had come. Barney had to learn very quickly. The race was epic. Barney figured out how to drive that ungainly car and over a 5-mile circuit won the race by over a half mile, establishing him as the fastest man on wheels. He beat the Bullet, and now Winton had to take a back seat to Ford as the fastest in the USA. Now that Barney knew how to drive a car, the legend would continue to grow. The fledgling Ford Motor Company was spurred forward by the success and promotion of Barney Oldfield, and he wasn't done yet with the Ford 999. Being a rather adventurous fellow, he pushed that car to be the first to exceed 60 miles an hour on an oval track for a flying minute, and also pushed the car across the 100-mile-an-hour barrier in 1904. But he was by this time a superstar, and dozens of other car manufacturers courted him with offers of money and cars to race for them. In 1905, the fledgling organization, the American Automobile Association, also known as the AAA or AAA, had established the rules to determine who would be the best auto racer in the USA. This was the first time in the U.S. that an overall season winner would be determined through a point ranking system based on a racer's performance over a series of races. There were 11 such races in 1905, and though Barney had significant success with the Ford 999, he took an offer from Peerless and drove the car that they built for him, the Green Dragon. There were several men vying for the title furiously. Barney, of course, Louis Chevrolet, who was driving a Fiat, Earl Kaiser, driving for Winton, and Webb J., who was driving for White and their steamers. Over a course of 11 races, these and other men strove to win, with Barney winning 6 of the 11 in his Peerless Green Dragon, thus winning the title for the season. The victories came at a price, Oldfield, Kaiser, and Jay having significant accidents during the season. In Kaiser's and Jay's case, injuries had ended their careers for the season. Yet Oldfield persevered, and by the end of the season was the most famous American auto racer in the world. Barney Oldfield continued to race until the end of the First World War. His victories piled up and was billed as the fastest man alive. He raced for many companies: Ford, Peerless, Mercedes, and even his old rival Winton. Oh, we'll hear more of his exploits in the future. But for now, consider this conversation that once took place between Ford and Oldfield. Ford said, "Barney, I made you and you made me." Oldfield replied, "No, Henry, old 999 made us both." Thanks for watching Vintage Car History, and we'll see you next week. Peace.